I don't know if this thing is threatening to blow up or what. It just sounds so slow. I might have to find a new video clip. um, hey, everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. Our friend Sean is in the chat. He is not on the show tonight because apparently there's a man in a giant boat taking animals two by two, and Sean's hoping to sneak aboard because it's really raining up there. So we're supposed to get a lot of rain tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to happen tonight, but we're supposed to get some tomorrow in the afternoon. So he is out, but Mr. Bob Rose is in. So, and I'm your host, Alan Orick, here on Under the Dome. How come our names are gone? What happened there?
I didn't even
Uh,
notice them now.
yeah, let me see. Oh, there they are. Okay, I didn't even notice they disappeared when that happened. So, um, okay, so for a change, before the show started, we did not get a sudden burst of Saints news. There was no massive trade, no free agent signings, anything like. And if anything, I think we've entered that period before the draft where nothing much is going on, but rumors flying. So I guess, we can start with tonight. I told Bob before we get started, we're going to avoid the quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive tackle conversation because I think we talked that to death last week for an hour and 45 minutes. So, yeah, I threw up Jordan Davis up there tonight because I want to talk about not only the other draft choices that we have and the other positions that we need to get filled, but also, this is going to be the first draft in 16 years that Sean Payton is not involved in.
Yep.
So this is Dennis Allen's show. Dennis Allen's a defensive coordinator. He's a defensive guy. He's going to call the defensive schemes. So would a guy like Jordan Davis be a surprise pick at, say, 16 or 19? Bob, your thoughts?
It wouldn't be to me. Not only Jordan Davis, but the other Georgia defensive tackle, Devontae Wyatt. They're both, mid to high first round grades, legitimate defensive talent, and either player would elevate this Saints defense even more. And not only that, defensive tackle is one of the underrated needs on this team. They have David Onyemata, who, even after he came back from his 6-game suspension last year, wasn't his normally dominant self. His lower statistics belie his contribution. But he didn't make as much of a difference as we'd seen the previous couple of years. And outside of that, you had Shy Tuttle. Jalen Dalton was injured for the year. It was a very thin defensive tackle rotation. So much so that Dennis Allen used Tanoa Passanio, Marcus Davenport, and Peyton Turner before he got hurt inside on a lot of obvious passing situations. So, yeah, I would not be at all surprised if the Saints target a defensive tackle at some point. And if you can get a first-round talent, you have 2 first-round picks, and you can get a talent like Wyatt or Davis and still have another first-round pick, I think you'd be foolish to not consider it.
So let's first kill the elephant in the room because I have been seeing this. I know you have too. The automatic assumption was when the Saints made the 2 first round picks by trading with Philadelphia, that they were going to do this and make as step 1, with step 2 being on draft day, they see a guy they like in the top 5, trade both those first round picks and jump up and get them. I personally don't feel like, and the assumption, of course, is it's going to be a quarterback, but I personally don't feel like there are people or players in this draft that are really top 10 players that you got to have them because there's a huge drop off after that. I promise we weren't going to talk about quarterbacks or receivers, but I don't think there's a Calvin Johnson or a Dan Marino or, one of those elite future Hall of Fame players there. I think you've got a good shot at getting a Orlando Brown, maybe a Willie Rofe. You probably have that level of talent in some of the offensive linemen, but I don't think you really have somebody out there that's so head and shoulders above everyone else that you have to jump from 16 to go up there and get it. Do you feel that way about this draft?
Yeah, I feel this way 100%. And I like this draft, but I like this draft for its depth and its talent at wide receiver, offensive line, and a couple of defensive positions. I don't care for it at quarterback, which I've said many, many times. And whether we're talking quarterback or any other position, you look at any mock draft, and the top 5, top 10, top 15, really, it's all over the place. You don't have any consensus names in that top 5. There's a couple, there's a couple repeaters, but nobody consensus. Therefore, since we did briefly mention the quarterback, I especially can't see the Saints moving up for a quarterback, because that would mean that they're giving up at least 2 first-round picks, a second, and a third for a quarterback or any other position. That again doesn't really stand out above anybody else.
I've looked at the top 10 players, and they jumble the orders a lot, but you just take let's just take pass rushers, because as Mike Detillier says, there are 2 players that you really need to get in any draft. If you have holes there, you need a stud quarterback who can put points on the board, and you need somebody who can put the other team's stud quarterback on his back.
Yep.
And you look at Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, who is probably, arguably, it depends, if you look at Adam Hutchinson's another name I see pop up a lot. But you take Kayvon Thibodeau, and we don't need a pass rusher, but even that argument, people are like, he's a little rough. Does he fit with the Giants at 7? Where would he go in this draft? Whereas, and I'm going to go back in time a good ways, because it is Atlanta, it is the Falcons. But you go back to Andre Bruce, I think he was 87 first round pick, maybe 86. But he was billed as the next Lawrence Taylor, because Lawrence Taylor was there wrecking havoc with the Giants, just won a Super Bowl. And so everybody was looking for the next Lawrence Taylor. And Andre Bruce was billed as the next Lawrence Taylor. And that particular draft class is pretty weak. But he was the consensus number 1 pick. And what happened with him? He turned out to be a bust. They tried him at tight end. I know he did screwball things with Atlanta. Jamie Dukes has funny stories where they called for a pizza and tried to rob the pizza guy with a BB gun, and they thought it was funny, and that kind of stuff. So it was one of those things that he just didn't turn out to be that number 1 overall pick. And you've seen several drafts like this. I always point to, what was it? Was it the 89 draft class that had 5 Hall of Famers and 1 bust?
Yeah.
Because you had Troy Aikman, you had Deion Sanders,
Barry Sanders, a couple other ones. The bust was Mandrich.
Yeah, the bust was Tony Mandrich, but Tony Mandrich was a hyped up player, and that's where I was going with this. Because we all remember the Sports Illustrated cover, the incredible bulk. They show this guy with the steroid body, which we found out. But he was supposed to be the most perfect offensive lineman. If you were to make a left tackle and you just carved him out of marble, that's what Tony Mandrich was supposed to be. And again, Jamie Dukes said, first time I'm watching this guy, I'm looking at his feet like he has terrible feet. He can't dance. His feet are slow. So, it's that kind of stuff that I think is the case, not knocking the entire draft, but because I don't think there's guys. There will be guys who are bust, but I don't think there's guys everyone's kind of focused on as being the best, and I think are going to be bust, other than probably Malik Willis. And I'll put that on the record. I just I don't have any faith in that guy at all. I think he put out an incredible workout tape, um, showing a rocket arm, is lightning fast in the field, but I think when it comes to him playing the quarterback position, he's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not a Michael Vick. Um, he's not at that level. And I think there's several players in this draft who are like that. So, that's why I don't want to trade up. I do not want to give up both picks. And that's why I brought up Kenyon Thibodeau, because I think he has that question mark there that you just don't go up there and go get him. So that being said, I think Jordan Davis would be a steal at 16 or 19. And I know people will be screaming at the screen going, why in the hell do you want to get, we need receivers. We need offensive linemen. Because I think, well, first of all, you could come back around it in 2 picks later and get your offensive lineman. But secondly, I think receivers are deep enough that you could go get them in a later round. Not an elite receiver like a Jameson Williams, or I'll take your pick, either Ohio State receivers and things like that. But I think a guy like Christian Watson probably might slide at least into the low 30s, upper 40s, where if you wanted to trade up and go get him, you probably could get a guy like him instead of waiting to 49. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that they do, offensive tackle and wide receiver in the first round. Who do you see, or what position do you see them going after in the second round?
I think that the fact that this team has not re-signed Quan Alexander is concerning. Demario Davis, it continues to be the epitome of excellence, and he is the straw that stirs this excellent defense. Pete Werner showed us all a lot last year, and I think he has a bright future. But behind them, the depth is extremely scary. Caden Ellis is an okay player, better against the run. Zach Bond looks like nothing more than a special teamer at this point. And then you have a bunch of guys other than that are special teamers or occasional injury fill-ins. So if this team doesn't re-sign Quan Alexander, which is still, by the way, a strong possibility, I think a linebacker is an underrated need. A linebacker could be a position to watch in that second round. Another position is running back. Look, I think everybody is assuming at this point that Alvin Kamara is going to be gone for probably 4 to 6 games minimum, and I think that's a pretty fair assumption until we find out otherwise. Mark Ingram is still a solid back. He still has some juice left in the tank, but he showed us last year, even before his knee injury, he was not the guy to carry the load anymore. So running back is another underrated need. What if one of these quarterbacks fall? You and I both feel that the Saints, they would have to make a move up from 49 in the second round to get a wide receiver if they don't pick one in the first. If they get their receiver and tackle in the first, and one of those quarterbacks start to slide that they like, I think that's the position that they target with a second round pick, because it'd be like, oh my God, this guy is still sitting up here on our draft board as a possible first rounder, and he's slid all the way to where we can get him. It's very similar to what happened with Paulson Adebo last year at cornerback in the third round. So I think if they don't get their quarterback, if one of these other guys fall, even if quarterback wasn't plan A all along, it becomes a pretty solid plan B at that point. So in other words, it's my long way of saying it's going to be best player available, but defensive tackle, safety, a couple safeties I really, really like that are going to go in the second round range. Safety, defensive tackle, linebacker, the running back. Those positions are all very much in play for the second round.
Yeah, I I think it's wide open in the second round, depending on what happens at their first two picks. That second day is almost like a round one over again.
Mhm.
The biggest problem I see is you pick at 49. You don't have another pick until the end of the third round in the compensatory section, which I think is like 111 or something to that effect. I had the draft numbers
Something like
earlier.
that. The Saints come in at 98 specifically,
Yeah.
but yeah, it goes to like 110, 112, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. Let me see. 'Cause I know they traded one of their third rounders. So they I'm gonna pull it up in a second. I know somebody's yelling it at me right now. I just don't have that screen up. 98. Okay, it is 98. I thought it was after. I thought it was later than that. So that's a huge gap. From 49 to 98. Um, so I think the issue you run into then is you're taking someone in the second round, knowing that you're not probably getting back into this draft until very, very late. So you want to target somebody who is probably a borderline day three player. And that's where I think if we just remove quarterback from the equation, let's just say they can't trade up and all the quarterbacks are off the board. So they take a safety, for example, in the second round, and a couple of safeties that I like in the second round is one's the kid from Baylor. I like a lot because I think one of the things that you want to do with the safeties they have on the roster right now. I think because not Marcus Davenport, Malcolm Jenkins has retired and Marcus Williams has moved on to Baltimore. I think Marcus may now slide into Malcolm Jenkins' slot as a strong safety. And now you're looking because he's coming off an Achilles injury. So you really don't want him trying to push his range out in center field. So you're going to be looking for somebody like a Jalen Petrie, somebody who can play center field out there. And Jalen Petrie is somebody who is possible in the middle of the second round.
Absolutely.
So I just think that would be something that would boy, you love to poke me, don't you, Calvin?
Yeah, I like Petrie too. Three other guys that I really like for round two are Jaquan Brisker from Penn State, Dax Hill from Michigan. In fact, Hill and Petrie are very similar types of players. Lewis Sign from Georgia is going to go in the second round too. He's a thumper. If you draft Sign, you probably play him at strong safety and keep May over at free safety and test that Achilles in the range. Brian Cook from Cincinnati is a kid that a lot of people were sleeping on. He's a converted corner. He'd be a little bit of a reach, at least from what I've seen of projections. He'd be a little bit of a reach at 49. He's more of a third round player, mid to late third round. But I wouldn't be angry at Brian Cook either, as far as checking off that need at safety.
One of the guys that I like a lot, only because I saw him play, is Reed Blankenship. But he is somebody I think probably is going to be an early fourth round pick. I don't think he's really the guy. If you pick him at 98, it's not really a reach, but I think it's more of a challenge there. Only because you're not get if you pick a Reed Blankenship, you're not getting somebody who's going to start still for you like you did with Paulson Adebo. I think you're going to end up getting somebody who's going to play special teams for a while, and you kind of play with a PJ Williams, Marcus May, and who's the kid they just brought in from Tampa that if he even makes the roster,
Justin Evans.
Justin Evans. You're kind of playing with those guys, and the Honey Badger's still hanging around out there, and I think that the honey badger that you know, uh, that is that's going to be an after draft. Let's see where we are, what we have, kind of guy, and do we need to sign him? Do we need to put a little more money in to sign him? And that way we can kind of move May back to maybe have him play free and have Honey Badger kind of drop down in the box, or just have him rotate, take turns.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of too
so
high safety looks if you have those two also.
yeah, you change more from a single high to two high safety, and you play more cover two. Okay, some stuff going on here. I'm trying to keep up with y'all's comments. I'm missing some of them, I know. Mitchie and Corral. Matt, is that who you like? Or you just starting with Calvin? um, so let's say, okay, thank you. That's Evans. Let's say that the Saints don't do safety in second round. What other positions other than running back? What other positions do you think they could target in the second round that would be really good?
I mentioned linebacker. Who again, if they don't re-sign Quan Alexander, that's
Mm-hmm.
really an underrated need.
Mm-hmm.
But the Saints have targeted a linebacker in either the second or third round for I think 3 straight years now.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think Devin Lloyd, linebacker from Utah, he's going to be a first round pick, as is Nakobe Dean. But outside of that, some legitimate second round considerations would be certainly Christian Harris from Alabama. Brian Asamoah from Oklahoma, Brandon Smith from Penn State, if you're going to take a little bit of a reach. And again, two more Georgia defenders, Quay Walker and Channing Tindall. But again, to reach, just like Brian Cook, the safety, Walker and Tindall, in my view, are more of third round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's middle of the third round. But again, if it's at this point, at that point in the draft, if you're taking a round 3 projection in round 2, you shouldn't really have a problem with that, because that's your team saying this guy fits a need for us in our scheme, that we value him higher than the general national projection. Those are a couple names at linebacker, and again, we're staying on defense, I realize, but outside of the mention of running back, I can't see a tight end being taken in day 2. There's a couple tight ends that I like, but none in round 1 or 2. So I think linebacker would be another position that could potentially come into play at pick 49.
That's interesting that you said no tight ends in round 2 or 3. So where do you
Yeah, I
see
say
a guy
round
like?
1 or 2. I could see round 3, mid to late.
Okay, so where do you see a guy like Trey McBride going, the tight end from Colorado State?
He's probably going to be the first tight end taken, and I could see why. If there's a tight end that goes in round 2, and I think it's ridiculous to consider any of them in round 1, if there's a tight end going in round 2, his name is probably going to be the first called. And I like Trey McBride a lot. Actually, if the Saints took a little bit of a reach on him at pick 49, as long as they got their tackle and wide receiver already crossed off that needs list, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, because honestly, as much as we've bashed the receiver position. We really, tight ends in even worse shape,
Well, yeah,
because you kind of have, because we don't know how he's going to be when he comes back, but you at least know that you had something with Michael Thomas, and you know Callaway and Hardy. Those are guys that are probably your 3-4 receiver or 4-5 receiver. And there are still some guys out there like, Jarvis Landry or something like that you could kind of bring in.
yeah.
But tight end wise, there's nothing left out there. And then what you've got on the roster really isn't. You got Adam Trotman, who's really kind of a poor man's Josh Hill at this point. And then after that, you don't even have a guy who is like I don't know, let's go back in time a ways for tight ends, but a Dave Thomas or just somebody who can go out there and catch passes for you. Yeah, Juwan Johnson's on this team, and people have this delusion that he is going to take that next step, but he really is. He's still a converted wide receiver. He's really a poor man's Dan Arnold, and people just when I say that, they kind of recoil, but you just don't have anything there. You don't have a guy who can threaten the seam, and you certainly don't have somebody you can line up outside the numbers and do anything with.
Yeah.
A safety or a corner can shut him down. So, I've been looking at the tight end position, and I'm trying to see if there's a guy out there that I like enough that can give you kind of that. It doesn't have to be a Travis Kelce, it doesn't have to be a George Kittle, but just somebody out there who can do what Jarrett Cook couldn't do and hold on to the ball, catching passes. So it's a name I keep coming back to is Grant. I'm gonna butcher this dude's name. Calcaterra. Is that from SMU?
Yeah, yeah. Our pronunciations are close, but I think I butchered too. I've been saying Calcaterra.
That could be a Calcaterra. He's only 6'3", 242, and I know they got Taysom Hill out there as a tight end, but let's be honest, Taysom Hill really is a slash player. He is a receiver slash. He can play tight end, but he's not going to bowl people over or block on the end of the line. He is a guy you can run jet sweeps with. He's a guy who's going to still take snaps at quarterback, even though that part is over with, as the short yardage RPO kind of guy, not taking a deep shot, but run the RPO, get rid of the ball quickly to get a quick first down if he's going to throw it. But he's just basically the slash guy. He's not going to be treated as on game day. He's going to be treated as a receiver slash tight end, not as a quarterback. And the only time he'll go back there as quarterback is for special trick plays they came up with in practice.
Certainly so in the first year after his conversion. I mean, I don't know what people expect, but like you said, Taysom Hill is still nothing more than a gadget player. Mm-hmm. He might round out to be a fine tight end, or at least I'd take even a serviceable one. But in year one, I think that's way too much expectation to heap on him. And Alan, I know you read my articles, so you know how many times I said this offseason. 19 individual tight ends had better statistics than the Saints combined trio of Troutman, Vanette, and Juwan last year. That is sickening.
Yes. So, I mean, to me, I circle the tight end position almost as important or just as important as wide receiver. It's just I don't see that converted basketball player, Jimmy Graham kind of tight end, which is what the league has turned into. People can talk about you need to be a blocker, you need to be vicious and that kind of stuff. But, Travis Kelce, his damage isn't blocking. His damage is running those seam routes and getting outside the numbers. And, if we have a Travis Kelce, imagine how much more deadly this offense would be. You need that kind of tight end. That's just the way this game is played now. Yeah. So, you go through.
I think I was yelling back at a lot of people that were screaming that the Saints didn't sign a free agent wide receiver, or the Saints didn't sign Honey Badger, or the Saints didn't sign this player or that player. The one way I think the Saints dropped the ball in free agency was not going after one of these tight ends early on. And they were gettable and they were affordable. They could have got one of these top end tight ends for about $8 to $10 million a year maximum, probably between 6 and 8. And I think that would have been an immense help. Because another thing to remember, name me outside of Kyle Pitts, who is just a blown up wide receiver. Name me the last rookie tight end drafted in any round that made an impact as a rookie. I mean, Jimmy Graham and Rob Gronkowski didn't even do it as rookies.
No.
It's something very, very rare to see.
No, Jimmy Graham, his 2010 season, he was splitting time still with Jeremy Shockey. It took him a year,
Yep.
and then he blew out. He had
Yeah.
his big blow up year in 2011, his first year as a starter. Yeah, uh, and we talked about this too, Calvin. Both Bob and I were dying for OJ Howard because I thought OJ Howard would be perfect to get away from that, get away from Tampa, and you can do something with him.
Hmm.
Because just because of the scheme that Tampa ran, I don't think it plays for a tight end like OJ Howard, who really is. He should be lined up outside the numbers. He's not an inline guy. And I think you make him an inline tight end, you're limiting his production. But we didn't get him. And that's probably my biggest, I think the biggest thing that upsets me about this free agents market, because I thought once they signed Christian Kirk for that ungodly amount of money, it just destroyed the receiver market as far as free agent receivers. But tight ends, yeah, you just needed a guy like that. So, yeah,
Another guy that's been rising up the draft boards at tight end is a kid from UCLA, Greg Dulcich.
yeah,
I've only seen a little bit of film on him, but he does look like a legitimate down the field pass catcher. I don't know about his blocking. Yeah, a couple other guys that I like. Again, not till rounds 3 or 4. Jeremy Rucker, Ohio State.
yeah,
Derek Deese for a mid to late round pick on day 3. I think is a sneaky good pick. Saints fans for some reason love Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson is another Josh Hill type of player, in my opinion. There's a couple other guys. Yeah, Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina is a real athletic guy. Jelani Woods from Virginia, I think, people are sleeping on. But again, all these guys, in my view, anyway, I probably wouldn't touch until round 3 to 4.
yeah. I think the reason why people like Jake Ferguson is they look at a guy like Mark Andrews and they think, oh, he's just another Mark Andrews. He's not Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
I was that was a pick I was really upset about when the Ravens made him. I was watching him drop, and I think he got picked either right before the Saints selected or right in the third round or right like 2 picks before. It's not very far from the Saints selection in the third round. I was like, damn it. That's the guy I wanted. And I've been beating a tight end drum for this organization, God, probably since 2007 when I wanted the Saints to draft Greg Olson, or Jason Witten. Because I just felt like, this team was always just a tight end away from being an explosive offense. And then, of course, when they got Jimmy Graham, you got to see what a tight end can do in this offense with peak Drew Brees and Sean Payton designing plays, and he was a pass catching tight end. So, yeah. So, I think that we do need a guy now with size on him to move the chains. Yes, you got Michael Thomas out there. Yes, you have Alvin Kamara for I don't know how many games. But, and if you get a burner receiver, fine. But you really need that guy who can go over the middle and make those tough catches. And I just don't see that guy on this team right now. And I don't know how soon they can get it. Yeah, Calvin's saying, go get a 6'6" receiver and run a 4.3, 4.4 and call me a tight end. Yeah, that is kind of what they did. What was kind of like what they did with Cook too, Jared Cook. It's that same thinking. I just want somebody with some meat on his bones too. It's not just tall; they got to be thick, and that's really the key on this. So you touched on it earlier. Running back. We do need a running back on this team. And aside from the fact that, Mark Ingram doesn't have that much left on the tires, and let's just say that Alvin Kamara gets suspended for 6 to 8 games, you need a guy who can go out there and at least carry the ball, be your bell cow running back. When Mark Ingram was suspended, we had a problem. When Alvin Kamara was injured last year, we had a problem at running back. Who do you see out there that probably can have a impact on this team that you would take from the second to fourth round?
Brees Hall from Iowa State and Kenneth Walker from Michigan State are going to be the first two running backs chosen. Brees Hall might even sneak into the back part of the first. I have a feeling both of those guys will be gone before 49. But if a guy like Kenneth Walker drops, again, I think you have to grab him because he just makes your offense better. Assuming those two are gone, the name I like next best is Damian Pierce from Florida. Second round might be a little bit high for him, but I'll tell you what, when you click on his film, and he runs like Mark Ingram, like a younger Mark Ingram. Grotesquely underused at Florida, which is probably why he will drop in the draft. Brian Robinson from Alabama, his name will be in the mix just because he's another Alabama back.
Yeah.
You get a Robinson, you're pretty much limited to between the tackles with him. But yeah, you look at Zamir White from Georgia, Jerome Ford from Alabama, Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M, are all guys that are going to be gone, probably gone, before the end of day two. So again, round 2, round 3 type of players.
What about a guy?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what about a guy like Kyron Williams? Do
Forgot about him.
Do you from Notre Dame? Do you see him as a sneaky possibility in the second round? Because he's kind of an Alvin Kamara kind of back. I wouldn't say as explosive as Alvin Kamara, but as far as a pass catching back, he has great hands. Some people say he's more of a third down back, but I don't think that really exists so much anymore in this NFL because it's such a speed game and getting people out in space. So I've been looking at him now. He's only 5'9" and 195 pounds, so that's very light to run between the tackles.
It is.
But I kind of looked at him almost like a Pierre Thomas kind of back, just as a possibility in the second round. And I feel for you, Calvin. I think Robinson is one of the weakest running backs coming out of Alabama in a long, long time. I don't think he's gonna be a bust like a guy. What was his name?
Trent Richardson.
No, not Trent. Oh, well, Trent Richardson was a huge bust, but no, I'm thinking about the guy who I don't think he even got drafted, and he couldn't stick in the league. Big guy. He was the power back for Alabama. He got picked up by the Cowboys, an undrafted free agent, and it'll come to me. Let me see.
While you're looking up, yeah, I like Kyron Williams. I think Pierre Thomas is probably a better comparison for him than what Alvin Kamara is. And the way both backs could catch a lot of passes, Pierre and obviously AK, but they're very, very different styles in the open field. And I think Kyron Williams has more of a Pierre Thomas. That guy will break tackles in the open field. He doesn't have the elusiveness that maybe you'd like, or maybe you do have out of Alvin Kamara. But he can make some players miss, and he can run you over. But like you said, he is not he's not the prototypical between the tackle guy, that you like to have. So if you get a Kyron Williams, you're still relying on Mark Ingram to pick up tough yardage between the tackles. But any back that'll give you, both cornerback. Any back that'll give you receptions out of the backfield will slightly soften the blow if you lose Kamara for any length of time.
We've kind of skipped over it a little bit, but I agree with you Bob, and you, Calvin. I like Pierce a lot from Florida. I think he is he's hungry, first off, and he just gives you that power running game that you don't get out of any of these other running backs out there. And yeah, you're right. Bo Scarborough was almost as big as Derrick Henry. He just was not as durable, and he just, for whatever reason, he just did not pan out in the NFL. I think because he was slow. I think that was his biggest problem. But yeah, I watched tape on Pierce, and I tell you, if the Saints take him in the third or fourth round, I'll be dancing because that would be a hell of a back. So I didn't mention very many names, but I think if the Saints just totally skip quarterback and just do receiver tackle, you look at you get a safety, say in the second round, and then the third round you get your running back. That's four legitimate guys who can have an impact on your team this year, and all in need positions that really can upgrade your team. Tight end, you're looking now in the fourth round. You can still get some bargains in the fourth round. Who are guys that you're looking at or thinking about that probably are more under the radar kind of guys that you would say, yeah, this guy is, let's take a flyer on him. And that's what I'm thinking of in the fifth and sixth round. Who are guys that
you mentioned? Derek Deese, the tight end from San Jose State. Mm-hmm. I'll jump over onto defense now. And a guy I know you like almost as much as I do is Quentin Lake, the safety from UCLA. He's not the athlete his dad was, Carnell Lake. But man, he has such good anticipation and understanding of opposing offenses. And Quentin Lake is another guy I like defensively. Back over offensively, the Saints have always found value in late round picks or undrafted guys at wide receiver and running back. And since we're trying to keep the receiver talk to a minimum, I'll mention Tyler Batty, a running back out of Missouri. That I like a lot. It's another guy that reminds you of Pierre Thomas, the smaller guy, or at least he runs small, but he'll pick up tough yards between the tackles. He's a reasonable weapon out of the backfield as far as catching passes. So yeah, if the Saints wait till a later round pick to address running back, I think Tyler Batty from Missouri is a name to watch.
Okay, and I'm going to address Calvin's favorite school of all time. He would go to. I can see going to Pittsburgh. We always hear Saints don't take players from LSU. They never draft players from LSU. LSU players that you could possibly see the Saints interested in, and it's tough because I really don't see that many guys from LSU. You got some lunatics out there saying, "Oh, they should take Stingley now." As if we don't have a Debo and Lattimore already on this team, and we signed Roby, the extension. So where you're going to waste your draft pick on a Debo? Not a Debo. I'm sorry, on Stingley, who who do you see from LSU that the Saints could take a flyer on?
I don't know. I'm like you. I try to avoid the LSU talk, because the Saints just don't do it. But a guy that kept popping up in my mock draft simulations, Cordell Flott, another cornerback. He's probably going to be a day 3 guy, but I don't have nearly as big a problem if you grab a cornerback on day 3 because you're addressing your special teams athleticism too. And he's a guy, he's a guy that if he plays well, and he's an athlete like most players out of LSU. He's a guy that if he plays well, he could work his way into the rotation by his second year, and you might be able to save a little cap space by not continuing to play a Bradley Roby. So a guy like Flott would be for immediate special teams contribution and future development.
How about a guy like Damon Clark from the linebacker from LSU. You know, there's an old saying, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. They used to compare, guys who look the part, but for whatever reason are never the linebacker or thumper or safety that you think they're going to be. And that's kind of my feeling with Damon Clark. It's not to imply that he's soft, but I mean, if you look at the guy, you're thinking to yourself, this is a hell of an inside outside. He can play both positions, inside outside linebacker. He's a little undersized, but he's got the physique of a linebacker and the speed that you're looking for. But for whatever reason, he wore 18 at LSU, which is the number to wear if you're a special player. I just
18 and 7, right?
Yeah, 18's the big one. I think 7 is the other one. You're right, but I honestly don't know enough about the school. But I look at him and I think he is going to get drafted because he went to LSU and because of LSU's reputation of cranking out great players. But I just don't see him as a guy who can come in and have an impact. I see a lot of Stephon Anthony in him, but he's a linebacker, and he's a guy who, if you got the right kind of coach, could probably do something with him. If he's got a lot of talent around him to hide some of his flaws. But I just found him to be an interesting player.
Clark was one player that kind of popped in mind when you asked the question. I was sifting through and I can't, I remember Flott, because I was thinking about day 3. But LSU fans, please correct Alan and I if we're wrong. Why would you want a defender? The way Alan just described Clark, it looks the part, but just something missing. Whether it's instincts, anticipation, football IQ, any of that stuff. Most of that LSU defense over the last 2 years has been full of players like that. We saw it reflected in the draft last year. We certainly see it out of the LSU defensive players coming out this year. And I'm including Stingley in that. Stingley got off to a hell of a start to his career, but really struggled over the last year and a half that he played. He still flashed great potential, but was highly inconsistent. So again, LSU fans, you might be wanting to rip our faces off, and I understand to an extent. But with the way this defense played, both individually and as a team, the last 2 years, you have a hard time arguing with that logic, right?
Exactly. I mean, a lot of people blame the defensive coordinator both years for why the defense was as bad as it was. But I blame the coaching too. But it just, LSU has had the advantage over many years of drafting outstanding athletes and fielding a team with outstanding athletes that had the speed and the football IQ to make up for deficiencies in their game. And I think when they got to some of them, when they got to the NFL level, got NFL level coaching and been able to become better players. Obviously, a Justin Jefferson has sheer talent, and you see that. Obviously, some of the other players that went in the first round and have impacts right away, Joe Burrow, Lamar Chase, those guys out there. I'm sorry, I said Jamar. I meant Jamar Chase, not Lamar. Jamar Chase. Obviously, those guys, they took a step up and have become great players in the NFL level. But I'm talking about as far as some of these players that are coming out now just are superior athletes that just have not gotten very good coaching. And I think that's one of the reasons why, there's many reasons, but I think it's one of the reasons why Coach O was shown the door and they brought Brian Kelly in. You want to get these guys not only to get the best athletes, but you want to get them coached up and become better better offensive players.
Mhm.
And I think on defensive players. And I think that's the problem you have with this draft class from LSU is you've got a lot of guys with a lot of talent and a lot of athletic skills, but you don't have great football players coming out of the school right now. But what's this? Okay, speaking of Chase, Jameson's the only receiver in this draft that had that kind of impact. You know, I like Jameson a lot.
Same.
And I felt when he blew his knee out in the championship game, first off, I was pissed off because I felt like, okay, Georgia's going to win this game now. But secondly, I felt bad because I'm like, man, you know, I didn't want him to get hurt that badly. I wanted him just to drop in the draft so the Saints had a shot at 18 because I felt before the knee injury he was a top 5 pick. People saw what Lamar Chase did; they were going to jump on him. But I think that you know, if Jameson Williams is there at 16, and granted you've got we've talked about before Penning, and you got some of these other tackles that are great guys. I think you just jump on Jameson. I'm sorry, and then you come back around and get your tackle 2 picks later because I can't see the Chargers and the Eagles both taking offensive linemen right there. I think one of them is going to take a defensive player out of the 2.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's amazing to me, the people on Saints social media, particularly Saints Facebook, that you'd have thought Jameson Williams lost a leg, like it literally fell off. Don't touch him. He's injury prone. It's one injury,
right?
Did you cut Jameis Winston because he blew out his ACL? Ryan Ramczyk had a knee injury that kept him out of 10 games last year. Should he be cut? How about Michael Thomas? He missed the year because of an ankle injury. All isolated injuries, by the way, folks. That doesn't mean one injury does not make you injury prone. What concerns me about Jameson Williams, as far as the injury, on the field, he needs to get more physical, to stand up to NFL the physical presses. But as far as the injury goes, the only way that concerns me if I were a coach is because he would miss training camp in at least the first 6 or 8 games, probably of the rookie season. So in other words, the only concern is the lack of immediate impact, because even when he comes back, he's still going to take time to not only adjust to his knee, but adjust to your offense. However, a guy like Jameson with his explosive skill set, he is still going to be impactful when he comes into the lineup because if for no other reason than he's going to take the top off every defense you play. Even if that's his only impact as a rookie, it's still a significant one. And I do agree. I love Olave. I love Garrett Wilson, both Ohio State receivers. Love Jahan Dotson and George Pickens too. But Jameson Williams is the most explosive offensive player in this class, hands down.
I agree. I totally agree. I was just thinking to myself, I'm going back in time again, but I remember in 1978 when the Saints drafted Wes Chandler, and they acquired Ike Harris in a trade. We got Ike Harris and Conrad Dover from the old St. Louis Cardinals, and we sent over Neil. I think is one of the guys that we sent over there. Was defensive lineman. And we sent somebody else over there. We really stole those players from St. Louis. I almost called them Arizona, but St. Louis. It was still the St. Louis Cardinals at the time. And the point was, I was a Steelers fan in the 70s. I enjoyed watching Franco, but I really loved Lynn Swann and John Stallworth, and I felt like the Saints didn't have those kind of players. They got an Ike Harris. He became kind of like the John Stallworth. For me, the numbers made a difference. They both wore 82. But when we got Wes Chandler out of Florida, And I watched him that preseason, and he's returning punts, and he's playing a little bit in the preseason. Preseason was very different back then. It was six. It was went from 6 games to 4 games that year, but it was not uncommon for the starters to play 3 quarters. With just a sprinkling of backups. That was how these guys got in shape back then. It wasn't year-round football conditioning, so they had these guys playing these preseason games like that. But I remember when I saw Wes Chandler's speed and him jumping out of the building to catch passes, I turned to my brother and said, "We finally got one." And he was my Lynn Swan, because that's what Lynn Swan did. But we finally got somebody who could take the top off for defense and have an impact. And sure enough, he didn't start very much in 78 because Tinker Owens was having a good year, and they were using him for punt returns and kickoff returns. But man, in 79 he came out there and he was smoking. First game of the 79 season, he set the Saints record that Michael Thomas broke in 2018 versus the Rams. That's how long that record set. He was the first one to get 200 yards in a game against the Falcons in 79. So I think Williams would have that kind of impact, even with a Jameis Winston at quarterback, or maybe especially with Jameis Winston at quarterback, because, he's going to run those deep routes and Winston's going to put the ball out there.
And it's not just the deep routes; it's the threat of a deep route. It's to make a cornerback give you cushion, so you can you can beat them with a stop route or a sideline route underneath, because your athleticism just gives you that kind of separation. It's not just taking the top off the defense; it's that mere threat, and that threat is also going to open things up underneath for Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, and your other complementary weapons. Create a lot more space than we saw these Saints receivers have last year.
So we started the show, and I don't want to go too much on the Williams because I'm going to get upset if we don't get him in. I'm going to be throwing things at the TV. But Calvin brings up a great point, and I'm going there. Calvin brings up this great point here. The Saints QB smokescreen is real just because last year the Panthers drafting every freaking player the Saints were about to draft. I don't know what it is about the Panthers, but the Panthers do that kind of crazy shit. There's some kind of, and I don't know if it was the offensive coordinator they had at the time, the former Saints assistant, LSU offensive coordinator. But there's something about the Panthers, and they're so terrified that the Saints are going to get somebody they need. So they just kind of like junk their draft board and jump up and go get this guy because we hear the Saints are looking real hard at him. So, if the Panthers I think the Falcons take Willis, because I think that, from the stuff we talked about already from the previous shows, I think Willis gives them that Michael Vick vibe, a majority black city, majority black fan base. That's a very real thing. You bring in a black quarterback who reminds them of Michael Vick, the good part of Michael Vick. I think you're trying to put asses in the seats in that stadium. Michael Vick, you get a Willis who is a Michael Vick kind of player, and he came from Auburn, nearby Auburn. I can see all those factors going into this where he becomes that quarterback. So that leads to the Saints, hyping up Kenny Pickett. We really like Kenny Pickett. We're thinking about trading up to get Kenny Pickett, and then I can just see Family Feud. The Panthers go up to the podium like, we're gonna take Kenny Pickett, and then the Saints, of course, throw the big red X. We were messing with you. We wanted you to do that. We're going to manipulate you into doing that. So that would be entertaining if that's what happens. But more to the point, though, is let's just say the Saints do, and this is how we started the show. They do that curveball, and He's talking about Andres Pete, soft as angel, soft tissue. Oh, here we go. Let's say the Saints throw that curveball and they draft a defensive tackle, the Georgia defensive tackle, at 16. Do you think they still do an offensive lineman at 19? Or do you think they do receiver? Which would you do in that case? Which position you feel is the deeper position?
And the deeper position in the draft. I
Mm-hmm.
feel the receiver is the deeper position in the draft, but I also feel that wide receiver is the better talent at the very top. I think the top tackles are going to be gone early. The kid from NC State, the kid Neal from Alabama, they're top 10 picks. Mississippi State, Charles Cross, probably top 10, top 12. Outside of that, you're talking Trevor Penning, Bernard Raymond are my next two tackles off the board.
Mm-hmm.
But this would be my curveball. I still go wide receiver at 19.
Okay.
I think, and I'll say it again and again and again and again and again and again, I think wide receiver is a far bigger need for the Saints than offensive line. You have James Hurst, who's not only a capable tackle, he's a reliable tackle. And you wouldn't, I like Hurst better at guard. There's no question about it. But if something happens to Pete, or if Ruiz continues to play like trash, I realize that if you're starting Hurst at guard, you don't have him to fall back on. But you do have Calvin Throckmorton, who played pretty well last year. You still have to address offensive line depth a little bit later on, in the draft maybe. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Saints did not use any of their top 3 picks on an offensive lineman. We're talking black and white statements here.
Mm-hmm.
If Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jamison Williams are all off the board at 19, and Trevor Penning or Bernard Raymond is there, I grab those, and I'm laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
But as far as black and white statement, most of the receivers I like are still there. Most of the tackles I like are still there at 19. I go receiver.
Okay, so I'm going to throw one last position because we have not talked about this position at all. But since you brought him up, you've got the struggling Cesar Ruiz. Let's say the Saints do receiver tackle in the first round. Okay, second round rolls around. Zion Johnson is staring at you at 49. Do you make that move and take an inside guy, a guard, a pure guard, not a converted tackle into guard or not a converted center? Do you grab a Zion Johnson at 49?
What I draft at 16 and 19.
You drafted a receiver and a tackle. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, you got Jamison Williams and you got Penning. You got your number one guys on your board. So now, second round, we've talked about the safeties, we've talked about tight ends and running backs, but now you're looking at Zion Johnson is the highest rated player on your board. Do you take him there, or do you try and, the safeties probably 3 points lower, 3 slots lower? I might jump a safety there, but does that tempt you at all?
It does tempt me because Zion Johnson is a hell of a player. Calvin, it's not that simple. It should be. It should be. Zion Johnson, first of all, if there's an interior lineman that's going to be drafted in the first round, it's going to be him. And I think he would be gone before 49. But if he's there, I do think I pull that trigger. And maybe I try to move Ruiz. Maybe I try to move Eric McCoy and slide Ruiz into center so I could put Zion at guard. Something like I get creative. But again, and as we've seen the Saints do this. Your best player on the board is your best player on the board. That's why we see them so deep at defensive end. That's why we've seen other positions, get doubled and tripled up in the draft, on back-to-back years. So if Zion's there, my first inclination is, look to see who's a couple of picks behind me and maybe swing a trade down.
Yeah.
But if that's not an option, I'd be hard. I'd probably pull the trigger on Zion.
And then the question becomes, which Zion plays more games, Zion Johnson or Zion Williamson? But I'm the same way. I would be very, all things being equal, and let's say I can't swing a trade, I have to pick at 49. No one's that interested in moving. The worst thing could happen is you now have 3 capable guards, and you can move on from Pete or Cesar Ruiz next year, because yes, Pete's been restructured, but there's still an out clause in a year, and given Pete's injury history, I'm looking at Zion as you're going to play. Whether we sit Ruiz down or Pete gets injured as always, you're going to play. So it'll be very tempting. There's 3 positions on this, or 2 positions in this team where I really do not want the Saints to take a draft pick early. 6th round, I'm fine with, but early, I do not want them to take a defensive end, and I do not want them to take a cornerback. I think those are the strongest 2 positions on the team, and thank God we're not in the 70s anymore, so we don't have to worry about them taking a kicker or a punter in the 1st round. But yeah, I mean, those are the 2 positions I think that are off limits in this part of the draft, the day 1, day 2. So, guard is underrated, not critical, but if he's best player available, I'm jumping on him.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to throw that last one out there, and I'm glad you mentioned Cesar Ruiz, because that triggered what I was thinking about to ask you. I know we went over an hour, and I promised Bob we'd stay at an hour because it's 10:07 his time. I'm sorry, 10:23 his time, and I know he's exhausted. Here we go. Trade Zion Williams to the Hawks for Grady Jackson. This is not a basketball podcast. My son probably make some comments about that one, but one thing I want you to think about for next week. Surprise trades, in the draft. Baker Mayfield is still hanging around out there.
Yeah.
Right now, everybody wants the Browns to eat that salary. They'll be glad to take him off your hands, but you're going to eat that salary. So I'm curious to see if they move Baker in the draft for picks. And I want you to think about, is there any kind of scenario where you see the Saints taking Baker Mayfield if they offer him for a certain kind of draft pick, especially if the quarterback's off the board, for a draft pick, and also, and the Browns agree to eat most of that salary, because they still list as $80 million because they haven't calculated all the salaries, but the Saints have a lot of cap room now, which is amazing to think about.
I think about $19.5 million as we came into tonight.
Yeah. So, they don't want to take the $18.8 million and whatever it is that Baker counts for, but I think I'm not saying he's just going to the Saints. I think Seattle's an interest. They could try and work something out with Seattle. They could even work out something with Carolina and Atlanta, despite them saying they're not interested in him. Because if the draft doesn't fall the way they want, these guys need a quarterback, especially a team like Carolina. They need a quarterback. They're not going to win with Sam Darnold. So, but beyond the quarterback, any kind of sneaky draft trades that we could see go on, I think we should talk about next week. But in the meantime, give me real Baker cakes for everybody. Yeah. The Saints I think the Saints are trying to get get that cat roll. There's John. Russell Slavin Jr. No. You don't need that level of profanity. You really, really don't. Now they're going to turn Zion Williams into a tight end for us. That's what they're going to do. In the meantime, thank you guys for joining us. Sean, we missed you. Sorry you didn't make tonight's show. I saw you pop in for a little while, and then the weather was really, really bad. Tornado warnings, all the rest. But hopefully the weather's better next week. 2 weeks before the draft, we're already in the middle of April. Not this week.
We got snow up here last weekend, and second damn week of April, and we're dodging snowflakes.
Well, we got Easter weekend coming up. It'll be 80 degrees all this week. So, I think
Happy Easter to you and the family, by the way.
You too. I think winter's finally done. In fact, I got friends that are already at the beach taking pictures of the beach, so bastards. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.